It is good to see you guys again. It is always a blessing to get to just be a part of worship with you. Many of you guys were here last week. And I apologize if it was a lot to take in or maybe a little bit confusing. And some of you guys are probably new this week and are even more confused because you weren't even here last week to even know what to be confused about. All that to just say, there was a lot as we got started, as we got to get framed things, as we got to jump into the book of Daniel. And so hopefully you were able to kind of talk through things in the small group. But if it was just craziness, I apologize. And hopefully this week and the weeks going forward will be a little bit easier to digest. I just wanted to hit again the kind of the focus of the year in a way that maybe is a little bit makes more sense. The main thing we're going to be focusing on is this idea of we're going to be looking at our heart this year. And specifically with our hearts, we're going to be looking at, well, what does God say? And what does Scripture say about what a good heart is and what a sinful heart is? What's kind of the difference going on there? And why does it matter? And the ways that it's been framed that we're kind of looking at this year is that a good heart is one that is soft. It's one that is alive and living. And a heart that is sinful has been hardened like stone. And I was thinking through what would be a way that would kind of make sense to describe this. And I think the thing that maybe might make most sense is how many of you guys play sports? It looks like a lot of you guys play sports. What sports do you play? Maggie? Lacrosse? Tennis? Cheer? Isaiah? Basketball? Yeah, you. Also cheer. I'll grab one more up here. Basketball. So lots of different, many of you guys have played sports, and if you haven't played sports, maybe you've watched sports. What is the thing you guys do when you're usually in a practice or before a game? What do you kind of do to get yourself ready? I know we did it a lot when I was in basketball. Exactly. You warm up. You get ready to go. And warming up means that you kind of get your body moving. You kind of start to maybe jog or maybe a little bit what you do, and then you stretch. And what that's doing is it's taking your muscles in your arms and in your legs and all the ones you use, and it allows them to stretch more easily. They're more flexible. They're softer and more ready to go. And you're ready to do the sport that you are going to be doing. You have a question? What? It's to hold the microphone on. But all this to say, so when you are warmed up and ready to go in your sport, your muscles are more soft and ready to go. And so that's what we're talking about this year, is what makes the heart soft and alive, and what it's so good for is you are spiritually stretched and ready to go. So in the same way that you tell your body what to do, and you can do those things when you're stretched and ready and your muscles are ready to go and everything's good, that's the same in our relationship with God. When our hearts are soft, we're ready to go. We're spiritually warmed up for the things God tells us. And so when we receive things, then we can step into those and we're ready to go. Whereas if you've allowed yourself to kind of fall out of the habit, or you're not spending as much time, with God, or maybe you're more, there's more sin just from the world and in your life, that's what causes us to have a harder time moving. Because I'm sure if many of you guys have taken a few days or off of your sport and then jumped back in, there's a little bit of stiffness. And so the idea there is the consistent practice of being in relationship with God. So that's what we're going to be talking about all year long. It's like the people that have their hearts that are soft, they're spiritually stretched and ready to go and step into what God has called them to. So tonight we get to see once again a story where Daniel and his friends are ready to go and they step into what God has for them. And so it starts off, there's a crazy series of roller coasters of emotions for this king. His name is Nebuchadnezzar. And so he's the guy we talked about last week who brought this first exile into Babylon. And when he did that, he was training them up to be these royal advisors. And so they were people that were in his court and they would help him to navigate life as the king. And in this story, the king has a dream that is troubling him. He said this dream that's just sticking in his mind. He doesn't know what it is. And so this is normally the scenario where he would invite in his wise men and his advisors, and they would kind of figure it out, and they'd let him know what it was. But he's pretty sure that his wise men are just going to say what he wants to hear. They're going to just say something. They're going to make something up. It's actually a couple ways back. But I'm just kind of framing it context-wise. But thank you. You're so ready to go. But anyways, he's like asking them these things. But what he's asking them is he's saying, no, I want to know that you know what you're telling me, and you're not just telling me something that you're making up. And so he's saying to his wise men, not only do you have to tell me what my dream means, but I'm not even going to tell you what the dream is, and you have to figure it out. And so now is the opportunity for us to kind of maybe get to practice this. So I guess we'll just say it right now. What am I thinking about right now, guys? Jesus. Yes, that's definitely one of the things. I could be thinking of, this is kind of a helpful thing that I made. What could I be thinking about? Could be thinking of, I could be thinking of food. I could be thinking of burgers. I could be thinking about, what are you guys going to say? I could be thinking about the sermon. What else could I be thinking about? What? Food. Yeah, I could be thinking about food. I could be thinking of music. I could be not thinking about anything at all. I could be wondering or have questions. There's so many things I could be thinking about. You guys can guess what I'm thinking about, but even if you guess it correctly, you may not know why I'm thinking about it. This is the same position that King Nebuchadnezzar has put his people in. To tell you guys the truth, I'm thinking about potatoes. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about potatoes for a while because I'm just wondering, we do a lot of things with potatoes. We have them with burgers. We have them at breakfast. People even make salads out of potatoes. Why are potatoes the vegetables that we chose? I'm personally a fan of a deep fried pickle. Why can't I have that with my burger at McDonald's? I don't even know. All that to just say, even if you guys could have guessed that I was thinking about potatoes, you'd have no idea why. And in that scenario, I did know why. But if I didn't know why, how would we ever reach that point? Well, the way how that happens is because the same person that put those thoughts, that put in this scenario, put the dream in the king's mind, is also the person that can interpret it. And so what we get to see here is Daniel and his friends realize we can't do this. The magicians and the wise people of the king realize we can't do this. But instead of being the people that don't know what to do, Daniel and the other people that have been faithful and relied on God last week, when they were staying close to him and eating the fruits and veggies, they turn to God. And they say, God, the king is really upset because Nebuchadnezzar's mad. He's like, you guys are trying to make stuff up. You're not very good. If you can't tell me this dream, then I'm going to get rid of you. I'm going to kill all of you. And so these guys are in kind of a tough spot. But Daniel and his friends go to the Lord and they say, Lord. And they sought him and they say, can you tell us what the king's dream is and what it means? And it's an incredible blessing that God does that. God blesses Daniel by telling him what the dream is and what the dream means, which even the king doesn't know, but he knows it because God is the one that gave him this. So we've reached this point, the point where we start our story, but I don't want to skip over the fact that this is an incredible miracle that we have just seen happen in Daniel and in this story where God came and he gave the answer to what the dream was. He did something that we couldn't do. There's no way that you guys could have known I was thinking about potatoes or why I was thinking about potatoes, but God is the one that can see and know these things. So now, many of you guys have Bibles. I'm going to read it as well. We're going to jump into this story and kind of get to see, well, how is Daniel going to say? He knows the dream. What's going to happen next? Well, we're going to start in Daniel chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 24 through 30. Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. And the king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, "Are you able to tell me what my dream is and interpret it?" And Daniel replied, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, diviner can explain to the king the mysteries asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. Your dream, your visions that have passed through your mind as you were lying in bed are these." And so, so we have this incredible time where Daniel goes to the king and he says, no one can do this. No wise man, no person. But there is a God who can tell you what your dream means. We see here, even when Daniel's so far away from his home, even when he's in exile, and he's working for a king that doesn't even follow or love God, he is still able to do what God has called him to. He's spiritually stretched out. He's soft and he's ready to go, and he steps into what God has called him to, and he's working on the heart of Nebuchadnezzar. He's giving this opportunity to point Nebuchadnezzar towards God. And it's going to take a process. It's not a very quick thing. We'll see over the next couple chapters, Nebuchadnezzar's not going to get it. He's going to continue to mess things up, to do things on his own power, to do things in sin. But through this faithfulness, his heart is going to be softened towards God. And so we have this incredible opportunity where Daniel, he could have just said, I know what it is. I know the answer to your dream, and this is it. But he says, he's humble, and he says, I couldn't know this without God. And I want to point you towards God as the one who reveals all things. And so this is where we get to start our story. And so as we just think through this, I think it's an incredible opportunity to think through in the times in our lives where we've asked the Lord of things, we've asked him to reveal things, we've asked for guidance, and then we run off and do that thing, but we forget to give God thanks. And so I think that this is an incredible opportunity where Daniel is pointing towards God. All right. We're already a ways into the sermon, and now we get to actually jump into what the dream is. And so we've got a picture here, which has been up, and you guys have, I'm sure, been enjoying looking at it. This is a little bit of a spoiler, but we're going to read through now what the king's dream is, and then what the king's dream means. And so it's a little bit of a read, but once we get through it, we'll be golden. And so if you guys can just follow along with me, we're going to start in verse 31. Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. And the head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and feet partly iron and partly baked clay. And while you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands, and it struck the statue at its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold were all broken to pieces and became like chaff on the threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace, but the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. All right. Everyone take a breath. Breathe out. All right, we've heard the dream. Now let's see what it means. This was your dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of Kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind, the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, and wherever he lives he has made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. And after you, a kingdom will arise, inferior to yours. And next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, for iron breaks and smashes everything. And as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush all the others before. And just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly baked clay and partly iron, so it will be a divided kingdom. Yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it. And even as you saw iron mixed with clay, as the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. And in the times of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it will endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out from the mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, the gold to pieces. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, "Surely God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, the revealer of mysteries, that you were able to reveal this mystery." We can see that Nebuchadnezzar, through the interpretation of this dream, sees that God is the one who had to do this, that God is the revealer of mysteries, that God is the one who is in control of all. We see this story, we see this dream of this royal succession, which is getting worse and worse and worse as it goes down. It is trading out true value, the value of gold and silver, and it's replacing it with maintaining power with things that just have might and power. It's moving to this position where it is trying to force its own way, but it is brittle. I don't know about you guys, you probably haven't built many houses, but I feel like a pretty important thing is to care about the foundation. And the foundation is where it's most brittle. Yeah, do you have something? Yeah, you are so ready because that's next week. Next week we get to see about, and that's a cool little piece that I'll say real fast, and then we'll learn more about next week. Nebuchadnezzar, I imagine, hears this and sees this, and it's like, all right, well then I'll make the entire statue out of gold, and it'll be incredible and amazing. We'll get to talk about that next week. But yes, there is a statue that is all of gold, but that's Daniel 3. Right now we're working on Daniel 2. But anyways, so we're working through it. We see the best is at the top, and it's just getting worse and worse, and it's growing down, and it's going away. We can see that the value is from the things that they have done themselves. The value is from their own power. The value is degrading. It is just falling into worse and worse condition. But we also see that God does something that human hands cannot. This rock comes in, it destroys it, and it is an internal kingdom. And so God is pointing to the fact that he is sovereign, more sovereign than any piece or part of this statue. He's greater than all the best kingdoms could ever hope or offer. God is also using this time to work on Nebuchadnezzar's heart. He's beginning to soften it, to pull, to push, to show his greatness and his power. And in this, we can see a softening. I don't think it's a coincidence that gold is a very soft metal when it is pure. It is able to be moved and malleable in ways that maybe other things like iron can't. And in the same way, God is working on Nebuchadnezzar's heart. And he's beginning to shift it and shape it and get it closer to a place where he can step into and follow God. This is not the end of Nebuchadnezzar's time of his heart being softened. He needs more warming up. We can still see this in the ways how he is saying, your God has done this. Your God is incredible, but he hasn't invited him in. He hasn't said, my God, or the God over us. He still has this terminology that is far and is distant, but we can see that he is beginning to see and experience God's truth. Many times in our own lives, we can fall into this as well. We can fall into things where we see God working, we see his incredible things he is doing, and we don't actually have it affect our lives. We still see it as something different or something separate. And so I would encourage you to see that and internalize it and have that work on your heart. So here we got the big idea. We've got the took piece, which is on the next slide. And the big took piece is the idea that those whose hearts are soft and good and alive, those ones that are stretched and warmed up and ready to go, they will submit to God. They will allow God to work through them. They're ready to step into the things he's got, just like Daniel, just like we'll see next week with his friends. But those whose hearts are sinful, that are hardened, that aren't malleable, that aren't flexible, they're going to not respond to God's truth. They're not able to move. They're not able to do the things they need to do. And because of that, they will fail to get out of the way of what God is doing. And step into it and instead will be destroyed by it. If they see God's truth and his power and they fail to allow him to be their foundation, and ultimately they will be destroyed in the face of God's power, just like the statue and just like these kingdoms. And so the piece that we're going to be bringing with us is we're going to be just talking, you guys in your small groups will probably get to talk through and examine what does it look like to stay spiritually flexible and ready to go so we can continue to step into being like Daniel's, even in a world where many people aren't able to have this flexibility, even in a world where many people aren't living life the way we've been called to. They're living in a way that's getting worse and worse and worse. And so we have the encouragement that that's the life we have through Christ. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for the blessing that it is for us to get to read your word and get to learn about people who have come before and have stepped into what you've called them to be and what it looks like to have soft hearts that are ready to run and jump into the things you've called us to, just like we run and jump in our sports. And so I just pray, God, that you would help us to step into those things, that we would do that so that we have an influence on the people in our lives that need to know that truth, just like King Nebuchadnezzar did. I pray that you would help us to know that your kingdom is good and your kingdom is eternal, and that we don't have to fear the structure and the failure and the needs of the statue of the world. And so I thank you that you are good, God. I pray that these students would have an amazing time in small group, and that you would continue to speak through them through Daniel 2, and then getting ready for Daniel 3 next week. So I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.